Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So, I will be talking about imitation learning for pigeonhole tasks. This is in collaboration with Sagar, Gubbi, and Bharadwaj Amrutur from Indian Institute of Science. Uh, we are a part of the center called the Center for Cyber Physical Systems. So, this project was actually funded by the company called Yaskawa Robotics, and they're particularly interested in contact rich tasks. For example, here we have on the left a surgical robot where the end effector is continuously in contact with the tissue. On the right hand side, we have the soldering station, soldering robot, and we also have the pigeonhole task. So Yaskawa is very interested in pigeonhole tasks because they have quite a few applications. Here is one example. So where here the gear is being inserted inside the ring by using this technique called impedance control technique. Uh, Impedance control technique is quite well known. Yaskawa has its own custom controller called the MotorFit controller, which also uses impedance control, and that is particularly useful for contact-rich tasks. Peg-in-hole task is a classic example of a contact-rich task, where the peg is being inserted here into the hole, right? So there is a constant interaction between the peg and the hole, where the forces are being read by the sensor here. So here we have a sensor, the torque sensor, the torque and force sensors, which measures the torques and the forces in all three directions. And based on the measurements taken here, an impedance controller is being applied onto the bed to realize insertion. So there are two main phases in the motor fit controller. Phase one is called the search phase, where the peg is actually searching around, trying to find the depression in the hole. And then there is something known as insertion phase. Insertion phase, the robot, as soon as the depression is found in the search phase, the insertion phase is initiated. In the insertion phase, the peg is being inserted into the hole by applying a constant force downwards, called the pressing. So here is an example of a typical motor fit controller being applied for the peg in hole task, for the peg in hole example that I showed previously in this case. And as you can notice, it applies some forces along the x direction. It applies no force along the y direction in this case, in this trial, but it applies a constant force of minus 25 Newton downwards, Fz. So it is constantly applying a downward force of minus 25 Newtons. And it applies no torques in this case. And as you can see, the position of the peg, Pz, is constantly decreasing, which means that it is actually going inside the hole. Also notice the changes in the roll and the pitch angles of the peg, and they constantly go towards a constant value, which is zero, almost zero in this case. And also notice the forces that are being measured by the sensor, Fx, Fy, Fz, and Frx, Fry, and they seem to be very, very noisy, right? In fact, this is the situation, right? This is the problem. So because the measurements are noisy, it somehow works for higher clearances, but not for lower clearances. It fails for high precision tasks. So when I say high precision, I am referring to less than 10 micron clearance. Why 10 micron clearance in this case? Because the robot that we used had a position accuracy of close to 100 microns. So the position accuracy required is less than 10 microns, which was not possible with the robot that we had, right? So they are either non-existent or very expensive. And at the same time, we have to understand that the torque sensor that we used is only 6 axis, right? We get 6 values. On the other hand, the haptic feedback that is typically used out there is not enough, and it's not even good enough in our case. So here is an example of a reinforcement learning technique used for realizing this peg in hole task here. This work was done by, again, Yaskawa and its team with IBM, and they realized it using deep reinforcement learning. But they took a lot of time to make this happen. So there are quite a few negatives to take from this. So the training time takes a lot of time. Training time is huge. And the training in real hardware is also very, very expensive, right? So the goal in our case was to somehow try to reduce this. And we wanted to take cues from humans themselves, because humans are able to achieve these tasks. Even if the accuracy is not enough, they are able to do this with ease, right? They are able to sense the forces and apply the corresponding torques and forces on the peg. And they're all doing this without even using vision-based feedback. It's all contact, right? All touch-based sensors. So the solution that we tried to achieve was, why not achieve very fast peg-in-hole tasks by copying the humans, by using imitation learning. So this is the goal of the talk. How to mimic humans by inserting peg-in-hole, mimicking humans through imitation learning. So there are two parts to the talk. This is the rough outline. So the part one has data collection. Part two has generative methods. So we used this technique called generative adversarial imitation learning, GAIL, for realizing imitation here. So we'll start with the first one, how to collect data. So in order to collect data, we used teleoperation. So here as you can see, the person on the left-hand side is using a 3D mouse, a remote control device to remotely operate the robot. It provides 6 inputs, and based on these inputs, the robot accordingly goes in. Right. So here of the peg-in-hole task here. So the person on the left is remotely operating the robot by reading the forces from the laptop. Once that is done, the peg is slowly being inserted here. So we had we collected like 10 demonstrations here. We collected 10 insertion data, and based on this data, now the goal is to realize the same in the robot. And we used GAIL. So the objectives are very clear, right? So we have data, we have human expert data demonstrating the insertion, and there is no way for us to evaluate the reward, right? So the reward, the moment we talk about reward, we are actually talking about reinforcement learning. Reward in the traditional sense of deep reinforcement learning made sense, right? Where the goal is to achieve peg-in-hole. So you simply give a very high reward as soon as it is successful. In our case, we did not go for calculating explicit computational reward. In our case, our discriminator will give us the reward. So in this case, in our case, the generator and the discriminator play a game between each other. So there is a game where the generator tries to match with the expert policy distribution, and at the same time, discriminator distinguishes between the generator policy distribution and the expert policy distribution, right? So each one is trying to fool the other. Each one is trying to outwit the other. For example, if a state action pair never appears in the expert data, right? And based on the inputs, the discriminator has to decide, oh, okay, this was not there in the expert data, so this must have been generated by the generator, right? So the generator has to more or less try to copy the expert policy in this case. So when the training is complete, right, after a long enough period of time, the generator and the discriminator keep on playing the game, and finally we have a policy distribution, generator distribution, which matches with the expert policy distribution. And note that it's not really easy to get this to work. We have to play with a lot of the hyperparameters. For example, we have to play with the frequency of update of the D and the G, right? So we had to make it more frequent or less frequent, depending on how fast the generator was learning. Right, so using this technique, the goal is to try to copy the expert data. Right, so our generator network has a convolution, has 2 convolution layers, and then 2 hidden layers, and then we have an output layer here. Similarly, for the discriminator, there are 2 inputs, right? One from the generator and one from the expert policy. We try to compare the 2 and then determine if it was fake or not fake. Right? So using this technique, we are able to come up with a generator policy after some training, and the policy determines how to insert the peg inside the hole, right? So in this case, this is one framework that we used for the 10 micron clearance, where the goal is to apply some forces, right, whenever it is stuck. So here the generator will tell me if the peg was stuck or not, right? So we simply observe the past 10 or 8 samples of the vertical position of the peg, Pz, and based on that, we determine if it was stuck or not. If it is stuck, we apply forces along different directions. In this case, we have applied Ax, Ay, and Az. Right. So this is one framework, and we did the training for like 10 episodes, and it started with 20 seconds insertion time, uh, which is as good as a failed case. And gradually, after about 10 episodes, the insertion time improved to 8.7 seconds. So there is like a 10-second improvement for the 10 micron clearance, right? Similarly, for the testing phase, after it was fully trained, we ran 10 trials and it successfully inserted the peg 10 out of 10 times. And the average insertion time was close to 5 seconds, 4 to 5 seconds. So we used a slightly different, actually a simpler framework for the 6 micron clearance, where the output of the generator only gives me two. There are only two outputs for the generator. So the generator will tell me whether to wiggle or not to wiggle, or whether to press or not to press, right? So both are independent outputs, right? And in every episode, in every time step, we check if the wiggle was turned on or not. If it was turned on, then we apply random forces across different directions. And if the press is enabled, then we simply apply a vertical force of minus 13 Newton, right? And we have the expert data, and then we compare this, and then we run the scale during training. And after 5 episodes, it was able to finally insert. So we did this for the 6 micron clearance, right? And also remember, we started with the 20 seconds. The episode started with more than 20-second insertion times, and it gradually decreased to 14 to 15 seconds. Remember, this is not as great as the 10 micron clearance, but because the clearance is much smaller, 6 microns, it's not so easy to insert this. Here is the comparison between the trained and the untrained policy. And as we can see, the blue curve corresponding to the untrained policy is not able to insert successfully. Right? So, and on the right, we can see that the insertion is successful, indeed successful. And here is a comparison between the trained and the untrained networks, right? Just to see what really it learned. And on the left-hand side, we can see that the distribution is more or less uniform, right? It looks very, very random. And on the right-hand side, the distribution looks more regular, looks more proper. This shows that the network has trained well. So with this, I would like to end the talk. Thank you for listening.